If you wake up at 3 in the morning with your heart racing, scanning the room for a threat that isn't there, your brain is not broken. It is trapped inside a security protocol that was never switched off, and there is a very specific neurological reason this happens at the exact same time every single night. Once you understand the architecture behind it, you will never look at your own exhaustion the same way again. When you try to fall asleep, your brain activates heavily overlapping neural pathways, including the amygdala, that it also uses to scan the physical environment for actual danger. That is not a psychological metaphor. That is documented human anatomy. Many people assume insomnia is always just a simple medical glitch. They blame bad genetics. They blame a lack of daily exercise. They point to physical conditions like sleep apnea, or common issues like depression and generalized anxiety. And while physical factors like those are entirely real, there's another type of restless mind that traditional sleep hygiene completely ignores. And that is exactly where the true science comes in. You might have spent years thinking you're just fundamentally broken. You probably label yourself a chronic overthinker. You feel a quiet, heavy shame when you lie awake in the dark, wondering why you cannot do the one simple, natural thing everyone else seems to do effortlessly. But for a mind that has navigated prolonged periods of high stress, the exhaustion of a post-pandemic world, the relentless pressure of modern hustle culture, or the lingering shadows of past trauma, what happens when the lights go out is not a malfunction. It is a highly developed biological adaptation. Your brain has secretly rewired its entire relationship with the night. It has cataloged your past stress and built a highly sophisticated defense protocol designed to keep you safe when you are most physically vulnerable. Once you understand the scientifically documented architecture of how your nervous system actually operates in the dark, the way you view your own exhaustion will change completely. What follows is the part most people never realize. I call pattern number 7 the acoustic barricade. People who have walked through life with incredibly peaceful, stable histories usually crave absolute silence when they go to bed. They buy thick, blackout curtains. They invest in expensive earplugs. They want the world to be completely, entirely mute. You operate in the exact opposite way. You get into bed, you adjust your pillows perfectly, you pull the heavy blankets up, and before you even attempt to close your eyes, you have to turn something on. It might be a large mechanical fan blowing air aggressively across the room. It might be a long podcast playing at a low volume. It might be a familiar television show you have already watched a dozen times, playing softly on a screen turned away from you. You do not just prefer this background noise. You rely on it for survival. If the power were to suddenly go out and your room was plunged into total crushing silence, you would immediately feel a rising panic in your chest. The silence would feel incredibly heavy. It would feel physically dangerous. Why does this happen? Because absolute silence is a blank canvas. During the day, your mind is occupied with tangible tasks and the constant grinding urgency of modern life. You're actively navigating reality, but in the dark, without external sensory input, a highly stressed brain will immediately fill the silent void with its own chaotic files. Researchers who study the auditory cortex have found that the human brain can use continuous rhythmic sound to suppress the startle response and establish a predictable baseline of safety. When you play a familiar audio track, you're not actually listening to the words. You are creating a controlled acoustic perimeter. Predictability equals safety to a hypervigilant brain. When you know exactly what the voice is going to say next, your nervous system registers the environment as stable. You are building a thick sonic wall between yourself and your own intrusive thoughts. You're outsourcing your vigilance to a machine so your internal guard dog can finally sit down. But here is where it gets strange. Pattern number 6 is the surrender resistance. You have been fighting intense exhaustion since 3 in the afternoon. Your eyes are burning. Your body feels like it is made of heavy lead. You know you have to wake up early tomorrow. You know you will suffer physically if you do not go to sleep right now, but instead of turning off the lamp and closing your eyes, you dig your heels in. You start scrolling through endless feeds of short videos. You read comment sections about endless news cycles and topics you do not even care about. You walk into the kitchen and rearrange a drawer. You essentially torture yourself with sleep deprivation. You hate yourself for doing it. You feel completely powerless to stop the negative cycle. But you stay awake anyway. The internet has a trendy, superficial name for this behavior. They call it revenge bedtime procrastination. They tell you it is just a bad habit caused by modern distractions and a simple lack of daily willpower. But the clinical psychology of chronic stress reveals a much deeper, more profound truth. Going to sleep requires you to execute the one action a highly vigilant nervous system is absolutely terrified of doing. It requires you to completely drop your guard. To fall asleep, you must lose consciousness. You must trust that the environment around you will remain perfectly safe while you are completely unaware of it. If you grew up in a chaotic environment, or if you recently survived a period of your life where things were highly demanding or unstable, your brain views total surrender as a massive, unacceptable risk. Holding onto your phone, staying awake and consuming random information is a desperate attempt to maintain conscious control. As long as your eyes are open, you are in charge. As long as you are looking at a screen, you are actively choosing where your attention goes. You are fighting sleep because your body deeply remembers a time when dropping your guard had painful consequences. You're anchoring yourself to the waking world because the waking world is a place where you still have agency. You can swipe away a video. You can close a comment section. You can control the narrative. Most people think this resistance is a character weakness. They have it completely backwards. I refer to pattern number 5 as the phantom threat awakening. Imagine a security guard who's been trained to react to the slightest rustle of leaves in a dangerous jungle. Even when he is later placed in a perfectly secure modern building, his hand never leaves his radio. Your internal biological clock functions exactly like that guard. Clinicians who treat severe anxiety and trauma know this mechanism incredibly well. It usually happens between 2 and 4 in the morning. You do not wake up slowly. You do not rise out of a pleasant dream feeling groggy. You wake up as if someone just flipped a high-voltage switch directly inside your head. You are instantly, intensely alert. You check the time, and it is exactly the same time you woke up yesterday. Your heart rate is slightly elevated, your breathing is shallow, you lie there in the dark, scanning the room, trying to figure out what woke you. This is not a random glitch in your biology. Psychologists who study the body clock and the human stress response have documented a fascinating evolutionary reason for this exact phenomenon, linking it to your natural cortisol awakening response. Around 3 in the morning, the environmental noise of the waking world reaches its absolute lowest point, and your core body temperature naturally shifts. The streets are empty. The entire world goes completely still. For a healthy, relaxed nervous system, this profound stillness is a cue for deep, restorative rest. But for a nervous system that has been aggressively shaped by past stress, absolute stillness is interpreted as a massive threat cue. In the wild, when the forest goes completely quiet, it means a predator is nearby. Your brain notices the extreme silence and triggers a microscopic, premature spike of cortisol. Cortisol is an awakening hormone. Your body releases just enough of it to pull you out of sleep, just to run a rapid diagnostic check on the environment. You wake up, look around the dark room, and your brain asks the vital questions. Is everything okay? Are we safe? Once it verifies there is no immediate danger, the alarm bells begin to fade. But now your conscious mind is fully awake, frustrated, and caught in the crossfire of an ancient survival instinct. And once I tell you what clinical researchers found about this next pattern, you will not look at yourself the same way. Pattern number 4 is the Sentry Sleep architecture. Let us talk about the actual physical texture of your rest. Even on the rare nights when you manage to fall asleep quickly, and even when you stay asleep without waking up, it rarely feels like true rest. You sleep incredibly lightly. You hover right on the very thin surface of consciousness. If a floorboard creaks out in the hallway, you hear it immediately. If the wind blows a door shut down the street, your eyes snap open. You wake up in the morning feeling like you were semi-aware of your surroundings for the entire night. You feel like you never fully sank into the mattress. You feel like you ran a marathon through thick mud while you were supposed to be recovering. This is not a failure of character. This is a brilliant biological adaptation observed in hyper-aroused individuals across all demographics, affecting men and women from entirely different cultural backgrounds. Clinical sleep studies monitoring the brainwaves of people with a history of high emotional stress have documented a real physiological phenomenon known as the alpha-delta sleep anomaly, or alpha wave intrusion. In a perfectly relaxed brain, deep sleep is dominated by slow, rolling delta waves. This is the restorative phase. This is when your body repairs tissue and clears out metabolic waste. But your nervous system fundamentally does not trust the deep sleep state. So it keeps the internal arousal dial turned up, actively allowing fast, waking alpha waves to blend directly into your deep sleep cycle. Your brain is literally refusing to fully power down. Think about a soldier deployed on a highly dangerous battlefield. If they are allowed to rest, they do not fall into a deep, comatose state. They sleep with one ear actively listening to the dark. They remain in the lightest possible stages of sleep so they can spring into action at a moment's notice. Your brain is doing something remarkably similar right now. It views deep, paralyzing sleep as a severe tactical error. You are technically sleeping, but your nervous system is actively working the night shift. And this is exactly why what I am about to tell you makes no sense until it does. I define pattern number 3 as somatic armor. You finally lay down. The house is totally dark. You pull the heavy blankets up to your chin. You close your eyes. And suddenly, in the quiet, you notice something deeply alarming about your own physical body. Your jaw is clenched so tight that your teeth actually ache. Your shoulders are pulled up near your ears, rigid as stone. Your hands are balled into tight, invisible fists under the covers. There is a terrible tightness in your chest that makes taking a deep breath feel like pulling against a heavy rubber band. Your stomach is completely knotted. You did not feel any of this intense physical tension while you were walking around during the day. It only appears the exact moment you try to rest. Why? Because during the day, your mind is constantly distracted by the external world. You are focused on daily tasks, on conversations, on navigating your complex modern life. But at night, when all the external distractions finally fall away, you are suddenly left completely alone with your physical body. And the body remembers what the mind tries so desperately to forget. Pioneering trauma psychologists, the ones who study exactly how the human body keeps the score, use a powerful conceptual framework to describe this reality. We call it somatic armor. The term is conceptual, but the physical tension is entirely measurable. Unreleased emotional stress is physically held in the muscle tissue and fascia. When we go through chronic anxiety or prolonged hardship, we literally brace ourselves against the world. We build a thick, invisible physical suit of muscular armor to protect ourselves from emotional impact. When you lay down in bed, your conscious mind rationally says that you are safe and can finally relax. But your sympathetic nervous system absolutely refuses to take the armor off. You try to consciously release your tense muscles. You intentionally drop your shoulders. You deliberately unhinge your jaw. You force your hands to open flat against the mattress. But 5 minutes later, as your mind starts to drift away, you realize you have tensed up all over again without even noticing. Your body is fiercely holding on to the stress because it fundamentally believes the physical bracing is keeping you safe. You're physically preparing for an impact that is no longer coming. What comes next is the part that tends to make people deeply uncomfortable, simply because it is far too accurate. Pattern number 2 is a cognitive loop known as catastrophic rehearsal. This is what happens when you lie in the dark and your mind begins to build elaborate, terrible scenarios out of thin air. You are lying in bed, physically secure, but mentally, you are living through an absolute nightmare. You imagine losing your source of income in a volatile economy. You imagine a loved one getting into a horrible accident. You play out entire tragic movies in your head with intense, painful, high-definition detail. You feel the crushing grief as if the event has actually happened. Your heart races, your palms sweat. You might even start crying over something that has not occurred and likely never will. When you finally snap out of it, you feel sick to your stomach. You wonder why you do this to yourself. You wonder why your mind is so violently drawn to tragedy when all you actually want is peace. In cognitive psychology, this is recognized as a form of future pacing driven by extreme hyperarousal. It is an overlapping symptom frequently seen in people dealing with generalized anxiety. When you have been blindsided by massive stress in the past, whether from a volatile childhood, the intense isolation of recent global events, or a personal period of life upheaval, the deepest parts of your brain make a silent, permanent vow. They promise to never be caught off guard again. The element of surprise is what made the past emotional injury so incredibly devastating. So, your brain uses the quiet, uninterrupted space of the night to practice. It simulates the worst possible outcomes so that if they ever actually happen, you will already know what it feels like. You will already know how to survive it. Your brain actually thinks it is doing you a massive favor. It is building a defensive emotional armor out of your imagination. It believes that if it can perfectly predict the pain will not destroy you. You are using your own mental energy to run worst-case scenarios in a desperate attempt to feel prepared for a world that has proven to be highly unpredictable. You are doing heavy emotional labor in the dark, trying to protect yourself from futures that do not even exist yet. It is an incredibly heavy burden to carry completely alone. What follows is the profound realization that explains everything. Pattern number 1 is the dawn relief. This is the most profound, deeply emotional, and fiercely misunderstood sleep pattern of all. It is the ultimate biological proof of exactly what your brain has been doing all night. You toss and turn for hours. You battle the racing thoughts. You deal with the phantom awakenings, the tight muscles, and the sudden adrenaline spikes. You check the clock at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning. You feel wired, restless, and deeply alone. The night feels like a vast, dark ocean that you're just trying to tread water in until morning. But then, something miraculous and incredibly frustrating happens. Right around 5 or 6 in the morning as the sky begins to turn a soft, pale gray. As you hear the very first birds start to sing outside your bedroom window. Suddenly, a massive wave of genuine, heavy exhaustion washes over you. The anxiety simply melts away into nothing. Your jaw unclenches. Your muscles finally truly release their iron grip. And for the exact first time all night, you feel safe enough to completely close your eyes. You fall into a deep, heavy, remarkably peaceful slumber. And you fall asleep just an hour before your alarm clock is about to go off. Most people think this means their internal clock is permanently ruined. They think they are wired backwards. But if you look at this experience through the lens of evolutionary psychology and a protective nervous system, it makes perfect, beautiful sense. Throughout human history, the night has always been the most dangerous time. The darkness hides physical threats. When you have survived intense stress, your brain reverts to this ancient wiring. It believes it is solely responsible for keeping you alive through the dangerous dark. You are the lone watcher on the wall. But when the sun comes up, the world wakes up. Daylight means high visibility. Daylight means other people are awake, moving around, existing in the space around you. You're no longer the only one on watch. The sun is a massive, undeniable biological signal to your nervous system that the night shift is officially over. Your brain looks at the warm light coming through the window and says, "The danger has passed. Someone else can take over the watch now. We survived another night. You can finally rest. You're not broken. You're just utterly exhausted from keeping yourself safe." When you look at all 7 of these patterns together, a fiercely guarded truth emerges. The world told you that you have a broken mind. The world was wrong. Understanding your own biology is the vital first step in changing your relationship with the dark, and it puts you entirely ahead of the curve as the elite sentry you truly are. You do not just have a standard sleep disorder. You have a highly evolved, elite survival protocol running in the background of your brain. Your insomnia is not a malfunction. It is the ultimate proof of an incredibly powerful protective nervous system. But here's the dangerous reality. While this evolutionary superpower kept you alive in the past, running this high-voltage defense system every single night is exhausting your physical body. You cannot simply turn it off by thinking positive thoughts or practicing generic sleep hygiene. You have to speak to your nervous system in its own biological language. You have to hack the sentry. There's a very specific neurological backdoor rooted in advanced grounding techniques and diaphragmatic pacing that allows you to bypass this nighttime armor and command your brain to stand down without triggering its alarm system. I have linked the clinical studies driving this research down in the description, and I am going to break down that exact step-by-step biological protocol in my next video. But before you watch that, I need to know who is actually part of this rare tribe. If your mind does what I just described, go to the comments right now and tell me exactly which of these 7 patterns is your loudest reality at night. Do not just drop a number. Describe how it feels. Claim your biology. It is the ultimate proof that you belong here. Subscribe to Nocturnal Mind so you do not miss the protocol, and I will see you in the dark next time. You are not losing your mind. You're just getting ready to master it.